Da, 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 da. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. Let me go ahead and do my little workaround here for the chat on the screen. Hopefully you all can see me. Oh, there we go. I didn't show up on screen for a minute, which is weird because I was connecting directly to YouTube this time, so it should just work, but I guess not. There we go. Hopefully that'll connect us to the chat there. Let's see if that works. It worked last time, so it probably should. Always good to double check. There we go. There we go. All right. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I think I have worked out the issue with the stream from the last couple of months where it would have trouble like actually staying connected and it would like disconnect and everything, and there would be bitrate issues. After working with one of the services I use to stream, which is called Restream, that facilitates this happening, they say that there's an API issue between Restream and YouTube, and if you know what that is, you know what it is, and if you don't, you don't. It doesn't really matter. And essentially, there's not a way to, like, their API is not compatible with 4K streaming. So that's why there's issues with that. So we're doing a little workaround for now. I'm actually working on a new stream setup, so hopefully this will not be a problem for very, very long. Yes, happy almost Saturday, indeed. But this seems to be working out okay. So we're gonna keep going with that. I hope you all are having a great Friday. It is a beautiful, amazing, warm, sunny day here. I think it's like 82 degrees, I want to guess. Actually, I don't know. Can I see the weather on my phone? Is that a thing that this does? Or on my watch? No, that's fine. It's like 80 something. It's fantastic. I read a book outside for a little bit today. It was amazing. It's the best thing ever. But how is everyone doing? Oh, yes, this is some crispy audio. I'm so glad you said that and noticed, because I actually did quite a lot of work to improve the live audio quality for streams, which I did not realize was a thing I can do. With the power of plugins, many things are possible. So I don't know, like if I type something in the chat. I don't know if you can hear my keyboard or not. It's supposed to minimize outside noises, but I'm glad that you noticed it, because it was many hours of work to get that sorted out. So thank you. I always pop in the beginning of the streams because it goes past my bedtime. Well, number one, congrats to you for sticking to a bedtime. And to me, these streams are early because they're at 6, but I know for a lot of people, especially because they go till like 8, that gets pretty late for folks. I've contemplated moving them back an hour and starting at 5. If I started this stream an hour earlier, which also, like, depending on where you're at in the world and whether or not you do daylight savings time or summertime or whatever, like, that may or may not actually make a big difference to you. But if I started an hour earlier, if I did like 5 to 7 instead of 6 to 8, would people like that better? Because I've been streaming at 6 o'clock on Fridays for a very, very long time now, but I know obviously there's no stream time that works for everyone everywhere. But I do like to give people the option to have their voice heard if there's another option that works better for more people. Awesome. Oh, it's not an Apple Watch, it's a Fitbit. I actually don't think I have it. I don't think I have it connected to my phone enough to, because it's one of the really simple ones. It basically just tells me if I'm stepping enough. It's just a fancy pedometer, more or less. But it's good to have. I like it. It's been very, very, very convenient. Good. I am so glad that you guys are enjoying the audio. I hope. I had no idea I could make the live audio better, so I'm very excited that was something I could work on. Ooh, the outdoor rope picnic was super fun, by the way. Some passing dog walkers, but we didn't have any issues. Watch some suspension and practice self-tying, and might just keep working on that tonight. Awesome. That is great. Also, I love it if people use the streams as a way to like have practice time for stuff. Like if you're like, I want to knit, I want to practice my rope bondage, I love it when people, because I do that with live streams too. I'm always doing something else whenever I listen to a YouTube video or watch a live stream. I'm always like dishes, laundry. Live streaming is like my version of like listening to the radio. Like that's what I remember growing up, is like listening to the radio to do chores, and now live streaming is the radio. So that's what I do too. And I love it. Okay, so before I get too far into it, because last couple of streams have had a little bit of a messy, jumbled start, just to be real clear here. Hello, my name's Evie. This is an 18+ live stream where we talk about various kink and sexuality related topics. This is 18+ only, so if you're not at least 18, please do not be here. That is for everyone's safety, including yours. I'm not saying if you're a minor or an older teenager that you can't possibly know what your sexuality is, or that you might want to be polyamorous or kinky or anything like that. It's just, it's not safe to mix adult spaces with minors participating in them, and just, it gets messy. It's not good. We don't want to mix those things up. Feel free to come back when you're 18. We will definitely welcome you. And I recommend, in the meantime, reading books. You know, if there's age-appropriate content out there for educational purposes, you can definitely, blogs and everything all over the internet are more or less, like some of them are behind an age wall, but there's many of them that are not, that are from professionals that are really, really helpful. Please read the rules down below. They're very simple. Basically, don't spam the chat, listen to the mods. I answer questions in the order they come in, so ask early if you want to be heard. And if you have something that's answered in the FAQ, I cannot promise I will get to it. So that just kind of covers more basic things like, where can I buy a flogger, what books do I recommend. Those topics are covered in the FAQ down below. And then I don't give mental health advice or medical advice. I do sometimes talk about mental health things that have been really helpful for me, that I think are nice tools to know about, because I know therapy is not always accessible to everyone, and I like sharing resources that people can, you know, go out and use on their own as well. But I always recommend, whenever possible, speaking to someone who is trained in this area, because they are very complex things, and just knowing one tool in isolation is not the same thing as understanding the entire process. So that's just that on that. But I don't give advice about like if you're somebody who maybe has like bipolar 2, and you're like, is it safe for me to do BDSM even though I have bipolar? I don't know. Like I can give you, you know, some advice maybe for finding someone to talk to, or like maybe some considerations to make, but I can't tell you like objectively like it's safe for these conditions to do BDSM and not safe for these other ones, because I'm not a doctor, and I'm more importantly not your doctor, so I would not know. That's more or less what you need to know to enjoy the stream. The title of the stream is always a rough suggestion of things we could talk about. I recently, earlier today, published a video talking about collar alternatives. So if you want to maybe have a little bit of a conversation about that, if you have some follow-up questions or comments, that one was really fun to redo, because I forgot how old that video was. Like, I knew it was old, but it was so old that I forgot where I filmed it at, and I was like, oh, this is from, like, not only just, like, pre-pandemic, but, like, multiple years before the pandemic. I think I filmed it in, like, maybe, like, I didn't actually look at the date when I looked at the video earlier today, but it was probably, like, 2017, maybe. It was probably 2017, because my hair was pretty short. Maybe even earlier than that, actually. It was quite a long time ago. So it was definitely time for a revisit, especially because there has been a lot of conversation online recently about collars on TikTok, evidently. And if you're one of the people who sent me a link or asked me to look up videos on TikTok about, there was somebody who went quite viral on there who was, well, first she kind of made sort of like a snarky post about people who wear collars, and then she followed that up with a couple of videos talking about her experience being I would presume, vanilla person who as a child grew up in a household with a mother who was collared in a power exchange relationship with somebody who was not her biological father. And it was to not spoil the conversation or her videos or take anything away from them. Very toxic, very messy, and like, to be honest, for me, it's taken a while to even like process that and be able to sit with it, because like, so I don't know what it is lately, but there seems to be a tendency with certain segments of the internet having a lack of kindness overall, and kind of just like pouncing on groups of people whenever the opportunity presents itself, regardless of how productive or kind it really is. Like, how easily the conversation goes from like, wow, your specific parents were like really shitty and terrible and that's awful, to like, what did you expect? Everyone with the collar is like that. And it's like, that's objectively not true. And I'm going to make a larger video about it because I think it's really important to dissect that. And I haven't seen anyone else from a like knowledgeable kink framework analyze that situation and talk about it. I think that's important to do so. But man, it has been a heavy couple of weeks of news, I feel like, and like media coverage and viral moments of stuff like on every social media website. Like YouTube, maybe not so much, but I feel like things don't really like originate from YouTube too much anymore these days. Like, it tends to be, well, I mean, you do get videos from like Cut and Jubilee and stuff that are like, this hasn't happened as far as I know, but well, they like, the videos that people make where it's like Wiccans versus like Catholic priests. Like, can they see each other's perspective? I forget what that series is called. Maybe Middle Ground, maybe. I think it's Middle Ground, actually. And I would very much be entertained by a version of that video that's like vanilla people versus kinky people. Although I would hope that they would not just stack it with like anti-kink rad femmes, but never say never. It's always possible. But yeah, you get that a little bit. For the most part, the original stuff is happening on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram to a certain extent, and newspapers and magazines, like real like big adult publications that you can buy print versions of at any grocery store in America, any bookstore in America, any newsstand, are everywhere. And it's wild, like how much more press coverage these topics have gotten and how much of a lightning rod they are. Whereas I feel like when I started doing YouTube, I never saw stories about the kink stuff outside of the kink community. Like 50 Shades of Grey was still a conversation at that point, but it was like, that was it. Like, you didn't see like people were not regularly like going viral for like hot takes about like my mom wore a collar, when I was a kid, and like I'm connecting that to like trauma that I experienced. Like, that's not something that happened in 2015. So times have changed for better and for worse in a lot of ways. Are they moderated now? Oh, I have not watched one in quite a long time, so I'll have to take your word for it. I will definitely be making a response for sure. I think horseshoe theory is real in the case of rad femmes aligning with puritanical Christian fascists. Yeah, I think that's true. Like, I don't generally take stock in horseshoe theory, but I think in the case of what groups of people are very preoccupied with mandating other people's sex life to make it conform to what their moral system is. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how like openly, and this is the point I tried to make in a video that I made about, which one was it? There've been so many. I think it was the Twitter. If it was not the Twitter CNC video, it was something very similar to it that I've talked about recently, where it was not that one, because it came out, they were like side by side with each other time wise. It was the video that I made on like debunking myths about BDSM with facts and logic. It was that video. And yes, rad femmes for, not all stripes of rad femmes. I understand there's sort of like rad femmes, and then there's even different pockets within that. But back in the day, you know, in the 80s, radical feminist thinking of that particular variety was certainly anti-kink, but they did not openly cozy up, like as far as I know, openly cozy up to far-right figures, think tanks, conservative politicians, whatever that era's approximate version of like a libs of TikTok like figure would have been, you know, like Rush Limbaugh. I don't know when Rush Limbaugh started broadcasting, but you know, that maybe would have been the closest. Like, yes, they had very, what to me seemed like quite extreme ideas about mandating people's behavior in the bedroom or in their life in general, but not to the extent they do now, where they seem to be very, they just seem to be very open about the fact that their ideas go together, and they kind of just like don't care if like their evidence is coming from like a think tank that's entirely funded by like far-right Christian fundamentalists. Like, they're very openly like being in each other's camps in a way that did not used to happen. Oh, somebody please think of the children. Exactly. Well, they only think about the children when they're convenient to. They don't actually think about them for that long. Oh, that's good. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. I think heavy moderation can be detracting from a conversation, but if it's more, you know, I think especially when you're trying to have conversations, I feel like other stuff ends up being like marginalized community versus the people that hate the marginalized community. And with that especially, you have to be very careful with the moderation, because otherwise you're just subjecting a bunch of people in a minority group to like hate speech directly for like several hours for other people's entertainment, and that feels really icky. Early mid-90s. Well, I don't know. I'm sure like local, he probably got started locally well before that, back in the day. Also, my sweet Banditi taking a nap. We had a little outside time to read, and she very much enjoyed it. But now she is sleepy and is laying exactly in the shadow of the blinds, which is quite funny because normally she's directly in the sun, but now she's done with the sun. She says, sun is over. No more sun today. Hawking Apple products. I did not know that. My cat's birthday was yesterday. Her name is Freya. She just turned 4. Can you tell her happy birthday? Sure. Happy birthday, Freya. Is Freya one of those cats who like watches YouTube and like does that? Or maybe you have a non-bio cat. I don't know. Maybe you have a human cat that's named Freya. Yeah, spamming the chat is just silly. Just very, what are you doing? Why are you wasting? Like, this is my opinion. Here's my very cold take on trolling is this. It's very sad that you waste your time like that. That there's nothing else in your life that you could do that would be more fulfilling. You can't go outside and enjoy the sun in your face. You can't learn how to play the drums. You can't take up knitting, read a book, call your grandparents. You know, text your family members you love them. This is what you're going to do with your time. That's very sad. This is the way that you cope with existence. And life is difficult. Life is very annoying sometimes. I get it. We all deal with our stress in different ways, but is this really going to be the way that makes you fulfilled? That's my opinion. But any empathy will be interpreted as condescension, so yeah. All right, I'm going to go back to earlier in the chat here and get into some questions. So thank you all so much for letting me know how you're doing. Feel free to request a birthday shout out if it's a birthday. If we get too bogged down with them, I will not do all of them, but definitely something you can do for all manners of creatures. I keep wanting to ask Evie if she has lupine flowers in her backyard. No, it's way too wet. Lupine flowers are more, I don't think I have the right, I've seen them grow. I don't think they're not the right soil. Anyone got Rex on industrial music? I got a playlist I want to add to. Ooh, I don't really listen to like industrial metal as like, or sorry, not metal specifically, but industrial music. I don't listen to on its own as like a thing I search out for, but I'm always happy to hear it on a playlist. I feel like you got all the good ones I know. If you got Ministry, Skinny Puppy, Sisters of Mercy. I mean, are they really industrial? Who knows? Alien Sex Fiend. Honestly, what I do if I'm looking, especially for music in that wheelhouse, like kind of more goth, industrial, post-punk, that realm, I will look for playlists on YouTube. Like, people will do like mixtapes. So like look up like industrial mixtapes. Actually, don't know, with industrial is kind of like, that could be a lot of different things on YouTube, like industrial music mixtape. And I found a lot of people I really, really like that way, that are maybe slightly more obscure, but like not industrial specifically. I tend to go more for like, I don't know what even genre, like dark wave, I guess. Kind of dark wave, cold wave, that wheelhouse if I'm looking for that. I think Korn is new metal. I think if Korn's any genre, it's new metal. I don't think anyone would... I mean, I think probably part of new metal is there's elements of industrial music in there, but I think new metal is probably more the label. See, this is like also like what fits into a genre. Like, I would not... Combi Christ, yeah. I don't know if V&V Nation is industrial. I sort of think of them actually as kind of more poppy than anything. I don't know if maybe that's a hot take. Yeah, does anyone know what industrial is? Probably not. Honestly, that is the one thing that my life has really changed perspective on. That's a weird way of phrasing it. But like, the one thing that I've really changed perspective on over the last, I'd say probably 8-9 years, is like how much I do not care about genre conventions or like fitting into a certain label. Like, I feel like when I was younger, and I think this is probably true for a lot of young adults, because you're really trying to figure out your identity, and in order to figure out what your identity is, it's like, okay, when you learn how to paint and you're like, what is going on with painting? What brush do I pick? What paints do I pick? How do I compose a painting? What does it even mean to do that? Like, you want to have like a certain set of rules to follow, because then you know how to do the thing you're trying to do. And I think labels, and very strict labels, help people feel comfortable and being like, I am doing what is expected for my identity, and I'm fulfilling what I need to do to like be that thing, or be part of that community, be in that in-group, right? And as you get older and you get more comfortable and secure in your identity, you need those rules less and less, and you start kind of playing with them and messing around with them, and like, you don't really care as much as staying within those conventions, and it matters less if somebody is like, but that band isn't actually metal, but that band isn't actually goth, and it's like, why do you think I care? The only thing that matters is that it's good music and you enjoy it and it gives you the feeling. Like, the one thing for me, I am a massive Sleep Token fan. I feel like Sleep Token fans are like fans. Like, they're fucking fantastic. Okay. The drummer is like probably one of the best modern drummers I've ever heard in my life. I am somebody with music. The most important thing to me is like the emotions that are expressed through the vocals, and Vessel is fantastic at that. Probably the closest band to them for me before that. Well, Bad Omens is really good too. I'm a huge fan of Big Omens. I'm honestly really loving, for as much as people like to be like, Bad Omens isn't metal, Sleep Token isn't metal, blah, 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 all these bands aren't metal. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to have Metallica winning every Grammy for the next 25 fucking years until they're all in the grave. And I would really like it if other bands got a chance to shine. And it seems like everyone who's doing something new and trying to innovate within the genre really, really gets put down. I think maybe the one exception to this would be, my memory. For people who don't think long COVID is real, like, it fucking is, absolutely. I have never like before the last time I had COVID, I never had problems. I have now specifically, I have problems remembering band names and television and movies, like names of televisions and television shows and movies. And now I have to be like, what the fuck is this band that I listen to all the time that I can't remember? They literally just did a collaboration with Megan Thee Stallion, of all people, which is fucking fantastic. That was like, I fell to my knees in a Walmart when I saw that pop up on YouTube Music. I fell to my knees in a Walmart when I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that they are doing a collaboration. So I have to go find them. Oh my god, what was it? Why are there so... Also, everyone does remixes of absolutely everything. So, like, finding music becomes impossible because everyone releases 20 singles of every single song they do. Oh my god. What am I looking for? Where is the remix? I can find every other version of this song. Detour into my brain not working anymore. Oh my god, Spirit Box. I knew it started with an S, and I was like, what is it? It's an S. It's Spirit Box. Oh my god. Spirit Box is fantastic. Yeah, long COVID does suck, for real. I don't, as far as I know, have any other big things I deal with, but like the specific, very weirdly specific, I don't have trouble remembering like things I've read in a book or like stuff I've researched or dumb shit that happens on Twitter or conversations I've had. It's specifically trying to remember the names of bands and movies and stuff like that. Like that's where my memory goes. No longer uploading. Yeah, Spirit Box is fantastic. Guess I'm gonna have to listen to Sleep Token. This is about the dozenth time I've heard them mentioned in relation to bands and genres alike. I guess they really got popular with the summoning on TikTok. I don't remember. I really like their second album. And I'm not even sure I was like, what specific song do I recommend? If you go to, they have a Reddit. There's r/Sleep Token, and somebody like a year or two ago made a chart of like all their different song types, because they kind of go between songs that are like heavier, more melodic, hybrid stuff, and depending on maybe what would draw you in more. Honestly, what I would maybe start with is, this is a weird suggestion for somebody to start with, but I think it'll help you appreciate their music a lot, is go watch the interview that the drummer, did on Drumeo. And like, he's very, very elegant and just so good at explaining the craft of what he does. I think seeing the live version of even just, you hear the rest of the song too, but it's mostly about the drum performance, and it's fantastic. So anyways, people get very tied up with like labels and identity and like, is this metal? Is this goth? Is this in the right genre? Are these people posers? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the people who are arguing about this now are the same people that were arguing about whether or not like fucking metalcore is metal, and whether or not like what, like if hardcore is like pop music. Oh my god, it's so annoying. Like, I don't care if you think Bring Me the Horizon is metal or not. Like, I don't know why I'm supposed to care about this at all. It's just good music, and it's something that if it resonates with you, it shouldn't matter what label it falls under. And I think as we grow, it can be, labels are only helpful as far as they help you find other things that you like. That's the only reason we should ever care about labels, is like if they resonate with you personally in some way and they help you find other similar things. Like for me, the thing I was about to say and then I sidetracked myself was the band that to me was like the closest to Sleep Token before Sleep Token was another band whose name literally just left my head again. Oh my god, I just thought of it and I lost it. Too Close to Touch. There we go, Too Close to Touch. But unfortunately, the band is no longer active because I don't want to talk about it. It's sad. And I'm really happy that there's other people making music that evokes emotion in a similar way, and I like that. I don't like, lyrics are super important to me, which is why I don't really get into stuff that's, I don't know, like, is it like Lorna Shore, like that kind of thing? I've never really been into that. I like the emotive content of songs, so that's me. Labels are for soup cans. Oh my god, I love that. I need that on a shirt immediately. I just like what I like and I appreciate good music. She did an interview recently I saw where she does the greatest Mike Tyson impression. Oh, I would not have guessed that. I know, it makes me cry every time. I'm very sad. I'm very sad. There are exactly 3 bands I'd ever like risk going to a concert for, and it's Twin Temple, Sleep Token, and well, who else haven't I seen? I've seen Motionless in concert. I've seen Evanescence in concert. Who actually would be my third choice? Tool, probably. I'd probably want to see Tool in concert, but also Tool fans are kind of insufferable, so I don't know if I want to be at a concert with Tool fans. That's like the problem with seeing a band. Sometimes the fans of the band are insufferable and you're like, I really want to see them live, but also like I don't know if I want to be around other fans of the band, you know what I mean? But it's probably going to be, they did a North American tour, Sleep Token did this year, but they did not get anywhere close to the West Coast at all. I think the furthest west they went was like, I don't know, fucking Oklahoma or some shit, probably. Like maybe Vegas. I think maybe they did a Vegas show, but I'm not traveling. If you're in driving distance, I'm not going to the concert. I'm not that crazy, all right? I'm not going to fly to go to a concert. That's not happening. There's also like really good videos of the singer from Spirit Box doing like one takes and live performances, and those are fantastic. I saw Motionless not on drugs, and it was a great experience. Actually, it was a surprisingly small venue in Seattle, so it was super intimate, and I could see things very up close. I so far have gotten very lucky with going to, I'm not really a concert person, but I do have like bucket list people I'd want to see at least once to see it. Evanescence was fantastic live, by the way. It was the longest show ever. I swear to God, Amy Lee was singing for 3 straight hours. It was worth every penny to go. Fantastic. I was also in like a brand new arena in Seattle, so it was a really, really clean, really nice venue. Or at least it was recently renovated. I don't think they built it from the ground up, but they very, very like top to bottom renovated the space if it wasn't brand new. And that was worth it to go. But otherwise, I'm like, I don't know. Oh yeah, and Bad Omens I would see too. I don't know. I feel like Bad Omens, I don't sometimes I feel like music like that doesn't always fully translate to a live experience. I don't know. I'd have to actually watch and see if they actually translate well live. I could see Boy Harsher being good live. Oh my gosh, the Black Veil Brides. Oh my, they're still around? That's crazy. I mean, I guess they're all kind of still around in a way. The reason why I thought of talking about, take it back to maybe not just me talking about music, Omegaverse. Why I want to talk about Omegaverse. I decided, for no apparent reason, other than this is where my brain ended up going, that I've been wanting to talk about like alpha beta roleplay for a while, because every once in a while I get a comment that's like, what are you going to talk about alpha beta roleplay? And like it is a thing mostly in the puppy play community, and you do see it sometimes with power exchange titles outside of that. And I thought it would be fun to make a video talking about alpha beta roleplay, but then that's all also kind of tied into the Omegaverse, because I feel like that's influenced a lot of people's roleplay style, and you can't really talk about alpha beta stuff without talking about it anymore, because people are going to be like, isn't that like that Omegaverse thing? So it's more talking about it for the sake of like, so this is what a lot of people know it as, and like that is a really popular roleplay thing, and like this is how we do something kind of maybe sort of like that in the kink community, basically. But then there's also the complication of like sigma males, alpha males in a dating coach sense, manosphere sense. There's so many different, everyone needs to just stop using the word alpha for real. They did really good live. Well, that's awesome. I know some people are disappointed by bands they see live, and I never want that to happen. But yeah, if you're really into, like, if you're a musician and you want to, like, you're like, oh, I gotta try this thing everyone's talking about because everyone loves it so much. Some people do not like Sleep Token at all. I will say that. It's not everyone's cup of tea. If you're into, like, grungy, sludgy, sounds like it was recorded in somebody's fucking the basement garage, you know, no producer has ever touched this track, like, type sounding stuff, you're probably not gonna like Sleep Token because it is very, very, very produced, but it makes it extremely rewarding to listen to with headphones. It's one of the few bands that I actually, like, give a shit about, like, wearing headphones and to listen to them because it makes a meaningful difference in the auditory experience of the music. But it's not, like, overproduced either. It's not, like, it doesn't sound like it's too slick. It makes sense for what they are. Like, if, I don't know, fucking insert band here started to make really overproduced music, it probably wouldn't jam with their vibe overall, but with Sleep Token it works. That's kind of just like how they've always made music. Industrial recommendations. Oh, Swans, yeah. Death Grips, yeah. Idols, sometimes. Oh, wait, it cut off. The Sleeping Silos, honorable mention. Second Plus Paramedic, Torch, Sylvanesso. I mean, it's Day, Month, Year. Is that how you pronounce it? Is their band name Day, Month, Year? I have to know. And Suna or Sana, I imagine. Honestly, another way that I found a lot of, like, more undergroundy goth industrial sort of bands is in Seattle. There was one radio station. I feel like I mostly remember hearing it really late at night when I was driving. I don't know if I ever, like, found a way to listen to it during the daytime, but there was a station that late at night, like from like 9 p.m. onwards maybe, would play all that type of music. And there was like they had like a live DJ like picking songs, and it was really, really good. And that was a great way to find music and find out bands that were like coming to visit locally and playing shows. I'm assuming if you live in Wyoming, you're probably not gonna have a radio station like that, but, you know, maybe one's out there. That's another good way to find people too. I feel like everyone says that Mastodon sucks live, but also, like, sucks while recorded. I feel like that's like the one comment I've heard about them consistently is that they suck in, like, they're not actually very good. Sorry if they're your favorite band. But it is always disappointing when you watch someone live and then they suck. But yeah, it's just loud noise. I find a lot of that's like, I don't really, because I'm not really into like moshing and like into like, I don't know, band tour culture stuff. So I don't really get anything out of it if it's just like a bunch of very loud noise happening for 2 straight hours without anything distinct happening in any particular moment. Like, it kind of just all like gloms together, and that's not really my favorite. I will say there are bands that I discovered like watching live that were like openers. Like, I got into, was so long ago, when I was in college, I got really into, if anyone here knows Glass Cloud, I will be extremely, will be like, how did you find them? But they had some popular songs. I think they had like 1 or 2 that were really popular. But I heard Glass Cloud live, and they were very, very impressive live because of the way that, I don't know, the way that they constructed their sound live really translated well to a live setting. But like every other opening band I heard that night was like, it could not tell you anything distinct about them whatsoever. It all just, like, got stuck together. There's only Christian rock, and country. Yep, yeah, that sounds familiar. Mm-hmm. It's like crazy how much good music is coming out all the time, but people want to spend their time complaining about like, oh, but this band isn't this genre. That's really the point of why I brought all this up to begin with before getting sidetracked into talking about music is like, people are always eternally going to be fighting about labels and arguing over whether or not something is or is not something, but the tide of change is always coming, and you can't really do anything about it. It's going to keep happening regardless of whether or not you personally like it. So don't get too messed up with it, essentially. I do wonder how many masochists are born because they get really into mosh pits. There's also a lot of mosh pits also have really, really good consent practices. Don't rough anybody up who's just not there, who wants it. If somebody doesn't want to be in the pit, make sure they get out. Help each other. Don't punch anybody in the face. Don't do anything crazy. We're here to have a fun time, and I like that. That's a good place to learn that kind of thing. I'm just letting you know that I know every Legacy band ever. I mean, I sort of assumed that. But it's good to know in case it ever comes up on a pub quiz. You'll be my, I'll figure out how to message you. I'll be like, wait, I have a quiz about an obscure, 2000s emo band. I know who to call. I got one lifeline. Oh, jeez. I learned masochism from being battered by the actual waves of the sea. All right, the Captain Ahab, I guess. All right. I love how this could mean either pirate, naval officer, or like old man who lives on the sea. It could mean so many, or possibly houseboat. Possibly Sleepless in Seattle houseboat. I don't know if there's a club called Deviate in San Francisco. I've been to San Francisco less than a handful of times. Not really to any clubs. Being pushed into sand hurts. Mm-hmm. Oh, surfer. Yeah, I didn't think about that. See, no one here surfs. I didn't think about... Oh, somebody probably does, but... Surfing in the Pacific Northwest is like a special flavor of nuts. Like, what are you doing there? What's happening? That makes sense. Surfers are hardcore. Everyone's like, oh, surfing's so easy. Surfing's probably one of the hardest sports to learn IMO. That makes sense. Anyways, holy crap. Thanks for distracting me and talking about music for so long. And thanks all for the recommendations. I really feel like music, like the Kink community music, go together like peanut butter and jelly. I like, it's funny, so often when I go to Kink events, like the playlist is like the same playlist they've had for like 10 years unaltered, and like half of it is Marilyn Manson for some fucking reason, and it's very annoying. First of all, because there should be more diverse music in it, just point blank regardless. Like, different people vibe out to different music, and it's, hello? There's so many options here. Why are we not including more than just Marilyn Manson? But then also, I think, like, it's hard to maybe please a whole crowd. But when I have gone to events that have, like, an actual DJ that are doing, like, sets and putting together, like, involved playlist work, whatever that's called, for an event, that makes a really big difference. Like, music is so important to Kink, at least to me, and I think to a lot of people. And a lot of us are here because we like sensory and emotional experiences. And what is listening to a lot of those types of genres of music, not like in a sensory emotional experience way, or a way of like connecting with people in community. Like if you're someone who's, if you're, I don't know, if you're like a deadhead, if you're really into, going to a bunch of tour dates or going to concerts a lot, I think that, there's a community that comes up around that as well. Sort of like maybe like in the way that there's like an overlap between the body mod community and Kink. Like, it's not maybe a very big one, but it's certainly there. Vonabeg. I will look that up later. I don't really look up links on stream because y'all be sneaky sometimes, and I don't want to pull up something that's going to be, well, I guess at best a rickroll, and at worst something that gets my, channel a community guideline strike. But I'll look it up later. Only thing I remember of corn is that Halloween South Park episode. To not know anything about South Park at all and to not understand that particular reference whatsoever. Five or six makes no difference to me personally. The noise stops so you're not talking but starts again when we start talking. Oh, okay, it's good to know. Audio is really great, thank you. I like trying too much to do that. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to find a compatible person with the same kinks that I have, and I'm also still getting into fat life. That's a journey a lot of people are on. Hey Evie, have you ever seen a human pincushion at any events? I have, not as a regular thing, at least in my experience, and this, as always, disclaimer, varies a lot depending on where you live because different event spaces are set up differently, different norms and different community scenes. But I have seen a human pincushion before at a Halloween event, and they were doing it as kind of like a performance thing. It was not necessarily, it wasn't like on a stage or anything, but they were doing it. It was almost like, you know, when you walk through like a haunted house kind of, and there's like different, you know, Halloween-y things going on. It was one of those things. Like there was like a mummification thing. There was like a human pincushion thing. I think technically they were doing like a voodoo doll thing. There was someone... Was it at that party? The thing I usually remember that like really stuck out to me from that play space, and I think this was the moment when I realized kink could literally be anything, was I knew somebody that did pet play as a pet raven. And they had a handler who was also, actually there was a bunch of people I knew who had very like complicated pet play relationships. Like somebody whose dom was also a dragon, but then they were a fox. And this was a person separately from them who was a raven pet player who had a partner who I believe was also a cat, but then also was their like human owner person. And they did like an egg laying with like glass yoni egg scene. Like there was a lot of sort of grunting involved. It was I was like, oh, like I overheard that they were doing this. So somebody, like, I think some people were like talking about their scene they had planned, and I was like, they're doing what? Because I'd been in the scene for like a couple months at that point, and I was like, my brain was like trying to process that information, and I was like, oh, wow, you can really do anything and do kink. For the most part, though, when most people I know of have done blood play scenes in public or done needle play scenes, it either tends to be like a sort of onstage performance thing, or it tends to be behind back room, behind a curtain, sectioned off from other play areas for people who can't handle seeing blood, which I get, because there are lots of people who like instantly faint at the sight of blood, and it's not like oh, I gotta get over being squicked out by something, or I need to learn how to get over it. No. It's just, like, they can't help it. Their body is just wired to pass out when they see blood. And, like, I get wanting to not surprise someone like that with blood because of how quickly that kind of thing can happen, and you don't want, like, 3 people in a dungeon suddenly fainting because somebody's doing a really intense blood play scene. I get it. It's not, I think some people perceive that as being like shaming towards people who do blood play. Like, oh, you have to be over there in like the back corner, like away from the other kinksters because like you're shameful and you need to be hidden. I think, well, that can be true for some cases. I'm sure that there are people who run dungeons who are kind of like rolling their eyes like, oh, we gotta make a space for like those weird blood player people, but like, I mean, they pay for tickets, so we gotta put them somewhere, and like they do it all very begrudgingly. But I think there are also people that just for practical reasons, safety reasons, minimizing the area that, you know, blood is happening in for sanitization purposes. That all makes sense. It's not just about like the shameful blood play people in the back of the dungeon. You know, how dare they? How dare they have kinks? Wait, what happened with pet play in a glass egg? Somebody who was a pet player who played as a raven did an egg-laying scene with their partner, I believe at a Halloween party, though possibly it wasn't a Halloween party. It happened like a couple weeks like around that time period. And it involved a cage and a lot of groaning and noise. And I gotta be honest, I didn't really look that much. It felt very personal. Like, it felt like if I looked at it, I was invading somebody's privacy by even hearing it. Like, it was one of those scenes, you know, where it's like something very intimate is happening and it happens to be in a dungeon and sort of kind of in public, but not in a way that necessarily invites spectators. So I don't really remember the details of how it happened, but it seemed to have involved, this is going to sound very strange, but it's the only comparison I can make. The egg equivalent of doing the chubby bunny challenge with like glass, like yoni eggs, vaginally, and then releasing them with muscular contractions. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. Oh, goodness. Kink really lets you do anything you want. Yeah. Where I live, bloodplay, needle, and even edge has been banned for as long as I've been in the scene. Yeah, I know a lot of that depends on just local regulations, or something happens, the health department finds out about it, the fire marshal finds out about it, things go up the chain, and then people go, yeah, we're not going to let you keep your occupancy permit if you don't ban this type of event, because it doesn't meet our code requirements or whatever. Surprising, people always think it's going to be the police raiding your shit. 9 times out of 10, the people who actually wreck your shit are the fire marshal and the health department. You got too many people in a building. You don't have an up-to-date fire suppression system. Those are the things that get your dungeons shut down, most of the time anyways. That's what you got to look out for. I didn't look too closely at how many eggs in there. There was more than a couple. There was more than a couple from what I remember. Yes. Yes, basically. Is it ovipositioning? I don't know. I've never heard that word said out loud before. To me, that word's like a Tumblr word. That word is that was invented on Tumblr. To speak its name outside of the website is to summon a great evil. You gotta be careful throwing those Tumblr words around. Yeah. The trouble with having an obscure and specific kink is finding someone else to do it with. Yep. Especially these days. I mean, it's nice to have a website like FetLife that's a very big gathering place for so many different kinksters, but there is something that's really nice about specialty forums where there is that anonymity in that community where that everyone else who's there, if they've done enough work to be able to find this weird forum, is into the same thing you're into. And you don't have to deal with people were not, as far as I know, on a large scale, ironically trolling forums in 2002, especially for really niche stuff like that. And so you could take more comfort in knowing the people that were on there knew about your kink, and maybe it was easier to meet people that way. But FetLife is just needle in a haystack a lot of time. When you go through what all the top kinks are, they're not even necessarily anal sex, oral sex, bondage, probably lingerie, handcuffs. None of it's very you have to get down past the first 50 kinks before you're into anything that people would consider at least in the kink community to be unusual or weird, as in not common. Ooh, a watercolor painting. That sounds like fun. I'm doing great. I got to enjoy the sun. I started reading a new book today. We got to spend a lot of time in the sun. I'm trying to reset my sleep schedule. Bandit was sick last week. She's perfectly better now. I got her in to see the vet on Saturday afternoon, and luckily that went really well. And of course, as soon as we got home after the appointment, and after I'd spent money on some fancy medication and dog food, then she started to eat dog food again after refusing food for 2 days. So It is what it is sometimes, but she's all better now. It's like to see her act now, it's like she was never sick at all before. Like, I don't know how dog brains work. Like, she just wake up one morning and was like, I feel normal again. Did that thought, or a thing like that even occur to her? Or was it just like, suddenly things are different? Like, just, this is what's happening now. Yay. Like, it's like as though nothing went wrong at all for the past week whatsoever. It's adorable. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate that. I don't know if I could process witnessing that scene. I think there was a little bit of a benefit from being brand new to where I did not yet have, because at this time when I was coming up in the scene, like, yeah, felt like it was a thing, and like there were some people talking about kink, but I had not done any kind of like extensive survey of the kink scene, and I had like no idea whatsoever like what things were common or not. I knew that like bondage was popular. I knew that like obviously like spanking and things are popular, but I went to a dungeon that thankfully very quickly introduced me to a lot of what on the internet would be like fairly niche kinks. To really, I had no point of reference for like how common is it for people, how commonly do people do violet wand brandings or circus roleplay scenes or how common are middles? Like, I had no idea, because I met a bunch of people that were like that and like did those kinds of scenes, like people that did clown roleplay and people that did like schoolgirl stuff, and people that are all different ages. And so I was just like, well, guess this is normal. Like, I just I didn't have any ability to question any of it. I was just like, oh, this is what we do, I guess. Like, that's just, Whereas now I think I'm a little like, sadly, I am a little bit more judgmental about scenes that I see, but it's never from a position of like, that kink's bad, that kink's annoying, I don't like it when people have that specific kink. The only thing there are two things. There are two things that annoy me in a dungeon. One is when people are like obnoxiously loud on purpose and like are almost trying to drown out other people's scenes with their like sexual moaning. Because I'm asexual and because like I like having a sensory experience when I play, somebody sonically invading my scene space with their loud sexual moans from the opposite side of the dungeon takes me out of a scene immediately. And they have as much right to be there as I do. I just would like it if maybe people could be a little bit more thoughtful. And if you're that kind of person where like you swear up and down that you really can't help it and it's just how you are, although I have my doubts, and I think a lot of people that do that are actually just exhibitionists, and that's fine, but it's not my kink. Maybe we could try some mouth stuffing with some panties and a gag or something. I don't know. I feel like there's solutions to this particular thing. That does bother me. That's just a personal thing. I know they have just as much as a right as me to be there in that dungeon and to be playing and to be making noise and such like. I just find it to be very, like, it's like such the opposite energy of what I want to do in a scene that it takes me out of my own scene headspace. So that I don't like. And the other thing that's a pet peeve of mine is when I see people doing shit that I like objectively know is dangerous, and especially when it's like the way this always happens this way. I've never seen it not happen this way. Is you get somebody who's like an older, more experienced dominant, who's like usually their 50s or 60s, somewhere up there, maybe like late 40s. And they're playing with somebody who, of course, is pretty much universally really young, fairly new to the scene, probably 2 years or less of experience, probably more like a couple months at the max, doing something that, like, I'm pretty sure, I'm like, do they know that that's risky? Do they understand how, like, the suspension they've done is, like, a very badly constructed for this, and this reason? Or, like, do they know that, like, hitting that part of the body can cause, like, internal bruising? Like, that's the kind of thing I think of. And, like, obviously no one's ever going to say anything because it's not really the place of DMs. But maybe it's because I emotionally identify with the younger party in that scenario. And I go, do they know? Does someone teach them? Because they almost never socialize with the larger kink group. They go to the venue, they do their scene, and then they both leave. They never talk to anybody else. They never socialize. They just do their stuff and then they leave. Or, like, the older top is, like, more of kind of, like, a merry-go-round person, and they've been in the scene for so long that, like, no one ever really stops to, like, call them on their shit because, oh, well, that's Bob. He's been here forever. And it's like, well, but why does Bob like to, like, why does he like to aggressively cane everybody's kidneys? Like, why is that a thing that he does? Can we can we talk about that? Because like I know I've known people in my life that have had like they've had one kidney, they've had kidney cancer, they've had a ton of shit going on with their kidneys. That if you didn't tell them, hey, we're gonna do a scene where I'm gonna do impact play over your kidneys, that could cause really bad issues for them. And so I worry about that. But again, I can't do anything about it. I can't stop it. I don't try to like Karen my way into like ruining somebody else's scene. All I can think of to do is go, I don't really know if that's something that we should be doing. And I talk about it on the internet to process it. And that's what I do, more or less. Maybe people are obnoxiously loud because they're being bad and longing to be gagged. That is a factor we've not considered. That we should think about that. The whole sonic scene invasion makes me want to ask about your experiences, if any, with ASMR and BDSM. I've never intentionally done anything with ASMR in BDSM before. So I have definitely listened to ASMR videos before. I don't think I found anything that's given me... I found stuff that I find to be relaxing maybe to listen to, but not anything that's ever given me like tingly things before. But like in real life, I've had things give me tingles, but not like recorded sounds. Oh no. When I was doing the Disney college program, the girlfriend of one of my roommates screamed so loud I could hear her 2 blocks from our apartment every single night. On the one hand, good for them. On the other, have you heard of a pillow? You know, have you tried doing something face down into a pillow before? Have you tried other options for this? I do wonder if people that do that, they realize, like, because it's kind of a weird scenario, right? You have someone who's really loud and like you don't want to harsh their vibes, so don't really say anything, but maybe you don't really like it. But then because no one ever says anything to them, they don't know how loud they're being, so they never stop being that loud. And then when somebody finally tells them, after years and years and years of this going on, they're like mortifyingly embarrassed because they didn't realize how loud they were being. So like when is the right time to cut in and be like, okay, we got to say something? Is it ever appropriate, or do you just always have to hold your tongue? I don't know. I'm not sure what the rule is there. All right, I really need to go get my water. So BRB real quick and do a looking upon my adorable dog as I retrieve my water bottle. All right, you all survived for 5 seconds. I'm so proud of you. I don't know why my water bottle does this sometimes. It like has a little like fountain moment for a second when I first open it. It's like such a giant water bottle. I really need to replace it though because it's leaking everywhere. I'm so socially anxious, but I'm also that person who will call it if I see something. I mean, good on you for being specifically brave in that scenario. Not everyone would be that brave. I know I've sort of tended to be like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna say anything. Appropriate if done nicely, why not? There are definitely some people that no matter how you say it would take offense to it because it's like, why do you feel like you have a right to police my speech or my behavior? You know, why do you get to do that? And it's like, you know, there's because you're invading my scene space. That is like the one I find noise to be very interesting because it is that one thing in the scene where you can objectively say that like they are kind of forcing an interaction on you because it's like, well, if you don't like the way somebody is dressed or like a role play outfit or something, you don't have to look at them. You can turn the other way. You can go to the other side of the dungeon. You have a way to stop engaging in that while still being in the dungeon. Or if you don't like, you know, maybe a certain type of impact play, you don't have to look at it. If you don't like, you know, talking to someone, you can stop the conversation. If you, you know, if you don't want to engage, like, if you don't want to do a certain type of activity with your body or like feel a certain way, right? You don't want to do flogging, you can say no to that. But when it comes to sound, that's like you can't do anything about that. Like it's there, it's in your space. You can wear like earplugs if you remember to bring them, but even that doesn't necessarily fully stop it. So it ends up being a hard thing to manage, I think, sometimes. Your dog and my little cat could be twins. They are boneless sleepers, the both. That's true. She's got nothing but fluff under there. She has 4 bones exactly, and it's just her little legs. That's it. She's the best sleeper, though. Oh my gosh. She's like, always sleeps through the night, except for when she's sick. She falls asleep in the car like a little angel baby. She's just so perfect. But mark my words, when I say it's time for the stream to be over and I say goodbye and I say it with the very specific intonation that I do, she will immediately wake up. This is how I knew that she was sick, is her reactions changed, like in the morning and stuff, to doing things. Like she was not suddenly sprightly and alert when like I was ready to go do things at certain times, or if I would say certain things to her. And she knows the noise and the sounds that I make when I'm ending the stream versus just talking. She somehow knows. I don't know. I didn't teach her this. She just picked it up on her own somehow. Okay. Anyways, more questions. I'm gonna self-tie for a bit, fold some laundry, and watch the stream. Ooh, so much productivity. Look at that. Ooh, I get to see a friend of mine who's basically only coming out to the little theme parties next weekend. I'm not a little, but it does bother me how they are pushed out of sight all the time. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. I always wonder, I feel like I've seen it both ways, where like the littles want to be on their own because a lot of littles are very sensitive around other kink activities. Like hearing somebody screaming would like harsh their little space or their little activities. Like they don't necessarily want to be doing coloring books while somebody's like 5 feet away, you know, screaming and being caned. So like sometimes it makes sense to do like a separate party because it helps them have the theme they want to have. But I know we've talked about this before, and there's definitely a difference between like put the littles over there in their own weird space where they can be weird and different. And then there's like, we're making a scene for littles because they want to have their own special space, and they deserve that because they're all beautiful and wonderful. And like at Kink Fest this year, there was a little space that was designed for littles, and there was like a little like a tent area, like a blanket fort, a little like tiny TV you could watch like VHS tapes on. There was like coloring books and stuff, and it was really, really nice. And I saw a lot of people use it over the weekend. It was very well loved, and I'm sure they'll bring it back. And that was something that people specifically wanted to see. It wasn't like, go put your weird kink over there in the corner. Yeah. It's a thing though. People, it's like weird that like come on, it's 2024. Why are we still like littles are gross? Come on. Littles have been very popular for a very, very long time, but they've been especially popular for like a decade now. Once again, I say, get over yourself. Making sweeping anti-kink generalizations actually makes it harder to deal with abuse in kink communities. True, very true. Sad, but true. Okay. Lost where I was in the chat. Okay, there we go. Yes, yeah, the Megan Spearbox collab. It was crazy. It's not industrial, but recently I've been in my feels for Don't Cry for Your Daughter's Eve by Lydia the Bard, Feminine Rage. Oh, that's like a hot button term I've heard recently out of nowhere, Feminine Rage. I mean, I'm into it. Oh my god. Oh wait, she was in I Wrestled a Bear once? Wait, what? I didn't know that at all. Also, the fact I know that band at all means I should have a bullet between my eyeballs. Like, I don't think I ever like them in particular. Maybe they got better. I feel like that happened with a couple bands that, like, I knew early on in their journey, and then they got better as time went on. I think that also happened to Icy Stars, because I remember I was introduced to Icy Stars. I don't even think they had a full album out yet. They just had an EP. I thought it was garbage, but I think they got better as they went on. I had no idea. There's also, like, Courtney is, like, such a common name, too. I was like, I had no idea that was, like, an origin point for... Because Courtney is the singer for Spirit Box. The more you know. Lydia the Bard. Okay, cool. I'll check that out. I don't know, when you say Lydia the Bard, I expect sort of like a Lorena McKinnon, like, kind of Ren Fair, like Ren Fair melodic stuff, which I like too. That's fun music. Very different vibe though. Everything is awesome. Everything is fun when you're part of a team. Unironically, the Lego movies are great. If Disney just made movies that are like the Lego movies, the animation industry would be saved. Single-handedly. I'm just scrolling through the part where we're talking about music again. Littles are awesome. Bigs are awesome. Everyone is awesome. Correct. True. Oh, I think I know one of the organizers for the Kink Fest Littles Corner. Very nice person, and her daddy does a lot of storytime things. Oh, that's nice. Lorena McKenna is so good, though. She makes great music. That's a deep cut. That's like... That's the real music right there. There's a Kink Fest in the UK, and there's a couple of other cons that have, like, similar-ish names to that, so could be that. Or maybe not. Or maybe they do multiple conventions. I don't know. No, I've seen Bad Omens twice, and their fans pretty much ruin both shows. I don't get the frenzy. That's ridiculous. Not that you don't get the frenzy, but that the fans ruin shit. Like, why is it so often that fans ruin live stuff for other fans? Like, just get a grip. Like, when I went to go see Evanescence live, it was fantastic because, like, most people there were just kind of chilling, and then it was, like, me and, like, one guy that was extremely drunk behind me. Like, I don't know. He was kind of, well, part of it, he was trying to, like, borderline feel up his girlfriend the whole time. But outside of that, he was, like, having a good time. He was shouting and singing along. He had no qualms about loving the music. That was for sure. I have not seen the Lego Ninjago. I've seen the Lego Batman movie and one of the other Lego ones. I don't remember which one. I've seen 2 Lego movies exactly, but I don't remember anything with Ninjago, so probably not. Really? I've heard a lot of people say that Bruce Springsteen live is amazing. And I don't understand that. Like, I'm not into, like, I don't like Bruce Springsteen music at all. But hey, you know what? It's a good concert. It's a good concert. With the Alpha Beta Omega talk, someone asked me if my husband's a Sigma IDKY. I do feel like FetLife recently added Sigma as a label. I feel like, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I don't think Sigma, like, exists in, like, Omegaverse fic, as far as I know. But the only other way I've ever heard of Sigma is, like, in Manosphere alpha male content stuff, they'll talk about Sigmas as being like, they're alpha males, but they don't need a pack, and they're super independent, and they're really creative, and they think tactfully, and they're not, like, they're kind of like the introverted loner version of an alpha male. Like, alpha males are, like, more gregarious, outgoing, leader of a group, you know, have high social acumen, whereas Sigmas are more like, I don't know, to be honest. That's all I got. That's all I know about Sigmas. That's where the knowledge. I don't think even people who are into sigmas know more about sigmas than that. I think it's just kind of made up. I don't know why somebody would ask that though. I think sigmas are usually, they're seen as like in line with alphas though. I don't like, they're sort of two sides of the same coin. Ooh, 101 in Vegas. I mean, I know it gets hotter than that there, but that doesn't sound fun. Gotta get your water, for sure. I'm like shocked that Bruce Springsteen is still doing live music. I don't know why. It just seems like, oh yeah, that was a thing that used to happen. Still going on apparently. Any male needing a title like Alpha, Sigma, etc. is definitely beta material. Grow a pair. Wow. Might be true though. I've read a few fics with Sigmas, but it depends on the author. Then what role do Sigmas play the same role then? Are they like the alpha male but a loner on the outside? Like, or is it like a totally different thing? Sigmas, from what I know, they're really rare in fanfiction, but they're like broody emo boys. Oh, we gotta always have a place for the broody emo boys. Gotta have a spot for them. That's like half of fanfiction. Listen, if we didn't have people shipping bandmates together, where would fanfiction be? Honestly, that's like half of fanfiction is that, and the other half is people from like video games and sci-fi shows. That's it. Rise above social norms or some bullshit. Well then, like, am I Sigma because I'm in the kink community and I don't follow vanilla social norms? I should just make an account where I call myself the Sigma Dom. That should be my alter ego for when I talk about like alpha male manosphere people. I should just call myself the Sigma Dom. So I'll wear my sunglasses and I'll have like, I'll get like a fake, like really expensive watch. I don't know how else I would signal my my Sigma. Maybe actually Sigmas don't care about watches. Maybe that's too alpha of me. What would a Sigma wear? They were pretty emo in the fics I read. Okay, so Sigmas are a way for ladies who love the emos to get their fix in the alpha male universe. Oh, it makes sense. I get it. Each author decides which role they give them. That's what fanfic's all about. Yes, as Climate Change Pledge Arena. Which is like the fucking weirdest name for an arena, honestly. It's an Amazon sponsors it, which is why they call it that, because it's like they got to make up for the fact that they're burning through fossil fuel, delivering your Band-Aids and sunscreen in 12 hours, after you order it. It's very ironic that they would call it Climate Change Pledge Arena, but yeah, that's it. Do you believe there might be a link between Omegaverse roleplay and primal play? To an extent. I think there is. I think it taps into similar needs. This is like part of my sort of tentative, not fully fleshed out working theory of like, why is primal play and Omegaverse suddenly very popular? Well, I guess with Omegaverse specifically, there is this like emotional through line of like jealousy and possessiveness and like finding the one. And it's like, even in the more traditional like MM pairings, there is a through line of like possession and jealousy and like, I don't know, is like toxic monogamy the right word? Like that's the phrase that comes to mind, is like toxic monogamy, of like, they're so jealous and they're so overbearing, but it actually ends up being like a positive and good. And I think there's a level of that that's like, I mean, unironically, it's cope, right? Like people treat jealousy as like this positive because it means that your partner cares about you, and there's this like, not even in just Omegaverse stuff, but like leading up to the development of Omegaverse in what somebody's exposed to throughout their entire lives, in media, in books, in movies, and what they see in adult relationships that are modeled to them. Like jealousy is common, and it's like processed as being like, oh well, it's good he's jealous and possessive, even if he like checks your phone and hacks your Facebook account and puts a air tag in your car trunk without asking you first, because he just wants to protect you. He wants you to be safe. He's jealous. That means he cares about you. If a man doesn't care about you and doesn't chase you, do all these other things, that means he's not really that into you. And so I think people like take that a step farther into their fiction and into their erotica to further eroticize that. Like, because it's kind of two things, right? It's like jealousy is this kind of like negative emotion that's very, very painful to experience. But by eroticizing it, you can kind of take control and ownership over that emotion and squelch it and turn it into this like positive thing because it contributes this like erotic energy to the experience. But also with jealousy, especially kind of getting more into like male-female Omegaverse pairings specifically here, although most MM stuff is also written by women, so sort of same difference in a way. But with like male-female Omegaverse pairings that tend to be a little bit more violent, a little bit more relying on non-con or dub-con in their themings, there is also jealousy in those that can be more aggressive. And I think it can also be coped from the perspective of like, in actual reality, in real experience, jealous, possessive men are dangerous, can be very capable of actual harm and violence, and that's scary. And so also eroticizing that and neutralizing it through the power of horniness, and to be able to process it as like, oh yes, they're jealous and possessive, and even if they're really, really extreme, they don't ever really hurt me. They don't ever really do anything that bad. It always ends up being worth it because it helps the relationship in some way. And it helps you kind of cope with that dangerous feeling of like, yeah, like you could have a man in your life that is that jealous and possessive to where he makes your world smaller and smaller and smaller and makes you more and more dependent on him and, takes your phone away and hacks all your accounts and tracks your car and does all this really crazy stuff. But like, it's fine. And you get to feel safer processing it in like an erotic context versus like in real life. I don't know if that's like fully making sense, but yeah. The emotional jealousy is probably one of the biggest aphrodisiacs people use. People love eroticizing jealousy. Omegaverse is like secondary gender roles. It's like world building at Kink kind of, which I find really interesting. Yes, there's also part of it too. Yeah, there's also like you can be alpha and be female, and I mean I'm assuming not in every Omegaverse verse, but you know a lot of them. Yeah, jealousy is an emotion, so I don't think we should label it as bad. Yes. Agree. It just depends on how we express it or deal with it. Also, I think there's a difference between jealousy and being territorial. I mean, territorial to me, if you're territorial over something, it means you possess it like an object, which in a kink context can be perfectly fine. But I feel like territorialness comes with something that you own. And we, outside of kink, maybe we really shouldn't be thinking about our partners as things that we own. I don't think that's necessarily positive to a standard egalitarian relationship, or even to a kink relationship that does not involve that very specific flavor of power exchange, or where it's unstated and not necessarily something negotiated for. That's also something to consider as well. I don't personally think jealousy is bad or good. I think emotions are neutral. I think you can have positive emotions, like emotions that are regarded as positive in dominant society that are out of scope and inappropriate. Like, you can love someone and have that love be inappropriate because of the way that they treat you. That love may actually be not serving you because it's preventing you from like taking action to protect yourself against someone, or to like remove yourself from that relationship because you're following the emotion of love over like your duty to protect yourself. And like, I think, for example, like over investing in love and like, well, like love is really good and being in love is really awesome, like causes people to like reinvest in an emotion that is very positive, but also can have very negative consequences. Whereas like jealousy, it can like the way that it manifests and the way that we act in that jealousy can have productive or unproductive outcomes, and it can negatively impact our relationships. But jealousy also gives you important emotions, and it can also be wise to listen to that jealousy and be like, what's going on here? Because I think a degree of jealousy, when you process it, can give you information about like where you want boundaries to be at, or what things maybe you need to process, or like a bunch of other stuff. Because jealousy oftentimes comes not buried with, but wrapped up in a lot of other aspects, not just the jealousy itself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I usually skip out on or narrow down jealousy in my Omegaverse, but that is definitely a super good point. Yeah. I mean, my exposure to Omegaverse has been, it's very, like, a lot of it's very, like, possessive jealousy, like claiming you're the one. And I think that makes sense because, like, especially for eroticas written by women, so much of it involves, like, finding, like, the one you're fated to be with, your destiny, you know, and having the happily ever after, like, especially for, like, romance specifically, not just erotica, but romance, like, that happily ever after, or finding your forever person, is common in pretty much all of it. Like, that's kind of one of the staples of romance itself, is that happily ever after eventually at the end. But erotica can be more varied. Ooh. That makes me wonder if, like, there's a difference between femdoms and maskdoms. IDK is a real term. I mean, somebody probably said it before, but I wouldn't say it's common. When playing with intense kinks, yes. My gut reaction to that is, like, femdoms kind of do everything. Like, there's a femdom for everything. I know femdoms that are really into hardcore sadomasochism. I know femdoms that do, like, super hardcore, large anal insertion, medfets, really complicated emotional sadomasochism, hypnosis, cuckolding, like, you name it. Like, there's a femdom out there that's, like, very, very highly skilled with it and very public. I find that male doms, well, they can do a lot of that same stuff. It's not as common. Like, I think there tends to be differences in the flavors of what's common. Like, I don't see as many masculine or male doms that are as into, like, hypnosis, or a lot of the more emotional sadomasochistic things, or like chastity, or like genital torture, things like that. Especially for, like, the gay men scene, you'll see a lot more of that stuff, but not as much as with femdoms. And part of that is also a lot of femdoms are also professionals, and so there's, like, different expectations for, like, stuff that happens that professionals do for recording for, you know, videos for sale versus what you see in the public scene. So that's also part of it too. Mm-hmm. I was definitely speaking of territorial in the confines of a kink or power exchange relationship. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even then, I think there is a tendency in the kink community to an unhealthy extent, in some cases at least, eroticize and treat as a positive, like, possessive jealousness in dominant partners. And I've had that, like, personally negatively affect my life. So I am averse to that. I don't really like that. Because I've seen that be shielded because, oh, that's just what dominants do, which is not necessarily true. And I've seen it not be treated with seriousness because, oh, well, they're just their doms. So that's, like, their right to, like, do that kind of behavior. And it's like, well, but I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who's polyamorous, that's in a polyamorous power exchange relationship. So, like, the standards are different than, like, a monogamous closed kink relationship would be. And some behavior is still inappropriate even when it's coming from a dominant partner. I think this is honestly why a lot of people have very strong, like, I try not to engage too much on Twitter during Pride Month, because there tends to be a lot of very negative crap on there I don't want to engage in. But I did have to briefly check in because I was dealing with a video being age restricted on YouTube, and the only way to contact YouTube support is through their Twitter account. So I had to be on there at least a little bit. And lo and behold, what happens when I open up my Twitter home feed is I see a post from the same account. I've never interacted with them, I've never followed them, but for some reason I always see their tweets. And it's somebody who is both, like, turfy, hates non-binary people, but then also specifically really, like, this is what fascinates me, is they're always rad femmes, but who do they go after? Because it's not the fucking men. They steal somebody's TikTok, they post it without their permission on social media somewhere else, and then they get their hundreds of thousands of followers to like harass some woman for like daring to be married to a man and like being polyamorous at the same time. Like, why is your ire, Miss Radfem, directed at this woman and not at the man who is allegedly like gaslighting her and tricking her into being polyamorous? Because it seems like you're not really angry at him for being an abusive gaslighter in your phrasing, but that you're angry at her for being a dumb, stupid bitch. And, like, that does not seem very feminist to me, ma'am. But there are people out there that are very, like, rabidly anti-polyamory. And they almost always go back to this point of, like, you can tell how hard they're coping and, like, how the jealousy is eating them alive. And, like, look how her husband, you know, gaslit her and, like, tricked her into doing polyamory. But, like, the story they're telling is, like, you know, when I was pregnant, I was, like, perfectly happy for my partner to date other people, but I had a hard time, like, setting boundaries with my boss about, you know, how much work I was actually able to, like, physically do and feel comfortable. Like, it's like, wait, what do we extract all of this in? What is happening here? And then when they say, oh, here's the proof that he gaslit her into, like, being polyamorous, is, like, a story where, like, they'd been dating for, like, a couple of weeks. They'd been dating for, like, maybe, like, a month or two. And then he's like, hey, no pressure. Have you thought about having an open relationship before? And how at first hearing that was really hurtful to her, but then eventually they, like, work through it and like they have a happy polyamorous relationship now. And I guess that's what gaslighting is. You know, blink blink, what? Like, okay. But you got a lot of people that are just so mind-bogglingly froggy, I don't know. Whatever. Just over the top, like obsessed with this idea of jealousy and like so afraid of being tricked into polyamory that they project this like fear of all of this onto anyone else they come into contact with and like make it everyone else's problem, even when the other person is like didn't do anything wrong and like clearly was not. Like, is this what gaslighting is like politely asking your partner when you're in a new relationship before it gets too deep if somebody's comfortable? Like, what? Like, if he wasn't sure if he wanted an open relationship at first and then thought about it and decided, like, there was no earlier point where this conversation could have happened. You know, what do you want? The bi woman hate by TERFs and radfems has certainly reached a new obscene high level these days. Oh yeah, that's another thing too. I've seen a lot of influx of like anti-bi dialogue for some fucking, like, why? That doesn't make any sense. I don't get it, but it happens. It does. But I've seen it because that's like I more see stuff that's like polyamory and kink related. So you get a lot of people that are very like they're so fixated on jealousy that they kind of see it everywhere, even when it's not actually, like, they're so unable to believe that like other people don't experience jealousy, or they're able to do things despite having jealousy initially, or like they don't feel it as intensely. They're so afraid of feeling this emotion that they have decided the way to navigate the world is to dictate everyone else's behavior. And why would you ever want to live like that? That sounds terrible. I don't really know how I get into that exactly, but yeah, jealousy is a big thing. But I think the vanilla cishet monogamous world is very just enchanted by the idea of jealousy, like just both loving it and hating it, eroticizing it and being disgusted by it, and just like it almost it being the singular most important emotional experience that can happen in a relationship or not, like as a sign of success or failure, or if somebody likes you enough or not. Like, it's a lot riding on the experience of jealousy or not, or how much, or when it happens, or just everything goes back to that. First they came for the aces and the arrows, then they came for the buys and the pans. A new target is chosen every year. It's so sad. Oh yeah, they rotate through. They're like, all right, spin the wheel. Who's going to be our target this year? And then kink and polyamory is always open season. It's a year-round thing. But yeah, I think the current dialogue has been focused on bi people bringing their straight boyfriends to the pride parade. And it's like, do you know that like straight parents just like bring their kids to pride parades for entertainment? That's just like a thing that happens now. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about that. But suddenly, bi girl with straight boyfriend is like enemy number one. First of all, assuming he's straight. Assuming he's a man. Assuming a lot of things here. There's a lot of people out there. You don't even know anything about their life. You don't even know. They could be non-binary. They could be trans, but maybe they haven't done any sort of transition-y things yet. They're not comfortable with that yet. They're not sure what they're going to do. It's a whole process. Lots of things to be going on there. They could both be bi. Maybe they have a third partner. Maybe they have a girlfriend. They're in a three-way relationship. They're in a triad, but they didn't bring their triad to the Pride Parade because, you know, they live in Ann Arbor and they live in, I don't know, St. Paul. I don't know. Something like that. And yeah, it does it really take away from your pride experience to see a woman with a guy? Does it really? More so than being pelted with like the rainbow Bank of America pens, or like the Amazon and Google advertising, or like anything else that's like super, like I've always felt like the corporate things are what's the worst. And this is why I like kink events still. It's like for many reasons, obviously. But one thing that I do really appreciate is that kink events are like kink events. The people that sponsor them are like people who make gear and like maybe people who work in the industry and like pro doms and stuff. Like it's not like a bank or a grocery store chain or, you know, Amazon. They're not sponsoring stuff. So it's not corporate at all. And I feel like the corporate stuff is obviously way more harmful. Not that it's like, oh, we can only care about one thing at once thing. But I never ever see those same people complaining about having to deal with like a float sponsored by Google. Or like you know, a gambling company. You know, maybe they'd care more if it was Stake.com sponsoring a float in their local Pride Parade. The commercialized corporate bits are really the worst. They were going after the bi lesbians last year, and it was just bi lesbians trying to explain their experiences to bigots who just wanted to attack and not listen at all. Oh, yeah. The whole, like, how can you call yourself a lesbian if you're bi? Like, I know he, him lesbians. I don't know what to... I know lesbians that call themselves daddy. I don't know what to... like, I don't know how to explain this to you. But the experience of lesbianism is very convoluted. Like, I know... I've even... At a kink community event, actually, before, I've met a trans man that still identifies as a lesbian because before he realized that he was trans... He was a lesbian, and he's still in the relationship with the same person that, you know, previously was, like, his lesbian life partner. But then, like, they stayed together in a certain way after, you know, he transitioned. But then because his life and community is still, like, the lesbian community, he still identifies as a lesbian, even though, you know, he uses he, him pronouns and all that stuff. So... that would just blow their minds. Also, this person is like in their 50s or 60s, probably, like maybe 50s. And like they've been, this all happened in like the 90s. Like it wasn't even like the things I have read, the things I have seen, when it comes to older people in the kink and queer scenes and how they self-describe their experience of gender and sexuality would like melt the minds of a 22-year-old TERF on Twitter. They think that this is all like new modern invention. Language doesn't mean anything anymore. All these Zoomers are coming in and they're ruining the queer community by diluting what it means to be a lesbian. And it's like, I have newspaper clippings I've seen from like the 80s from like, you know, like a queer magazine or whatever that was like asking people how they identify. And like, it's always the most like flowery combination of descriptions you can possibly imagine. Like, yeah, I identify as a bull, leather dyke, he, him, lesbian, gender fluid, like just fucking 50 things are all happening all at the same time. And everyone was just like, yep, okay. Like no one stopped to think about it. As inclusive as Pride tries to be, why seeing a male presenting partner of the female presenting partner so offensive? I thought the whole point was to not judge. Well, people are scared, and fear makes people do dumb things, so that. IDK how and when is the best way to say this. Well, I mean, we're not going to change the name to humility. I don't know about that. I feel like maybe the judgmental people should learn some humility and that their experiences and ideas are not the only things that exist on the planet. But that's me.
Mr. Beansman donated $5. Hi Evie, thanks for always being you. Miss is adding reading her favorite books about Kali to my task to get to know her better.
That's a great one. There's so many good books. Have fun with that. Audiobooks, also great if you don't have time to actually physically read. There's lots of those books are audiobook now. Oh my gosh, I think we have 20 minutes left. Let's go. I'm like suddenly really tired. I'm hitting the wall. Not that wall, the other wall. It is pronounced day, month, year. The more you know. That's fantastic. I'm honestly surprised it wasn't a name earlier. Do you have any other book recommendations involving somewhat mid-hardcore BDSM? Where, sorry, let me translate this in my head. Female main character, I assume, is not a doormat, nor barely 18, and the male main character does not bully or grape anyone. I am very sorry. I don't know if I can fill your order. Book recommendations involving somewhat... I don't know of any. I don't know of any. Who was it? There's like one author who's like, whose books I have generally liked. But all of them involve like usually fairly young people in it. Or like age gap shit. The Marketplace series, I feel like I've always heard really good things about, but I haven't seen it. I've heard really good things about the original Sinner series, but I haven't read it. Anne Rice goes hardcore. I don't know if I don't know if I call that. Oh, here we go. Charisse Sinclair. Or Charisse? I think it's Charisse, actually. Charisse Sinclair has a shit ton of books. Most of them do not involve what people in the that community would call non-con or dub-con. How much of a doormat they are varies based on the female main character. So I don't really have any specific things there, but Charisse Sinclair is usually like fairly well regarded. I think that's sort of the ones that I know of, unless somebody has other ideas. I was watching some lesbian documentaries on BDSM a while back, and the flavors of lesbians I saw there were so amazing. Like, I think a lot of the modern rep in fiction lacks how radically gay it can be. True. I mean, there's a reason why lesbian leather clubs are named the way they are. It's because they kind of get rejected from all sides. I just don't know why every age gap has to be like 35-year-old billionaire plus 20-year-old didn't even graduate college student, Come on. Women who are 35 can have romance too. Come on. Also, the authors are always in their 30s, which makes it really funny because it's like, ma'am, why are you 36 and writing somebody who's 20? Doesn't make sense to me. But I guess everyone has that fantasy of finding love early in life and getting to enjoy it as long as possible. Which, hey, I get that. I'd love to, who doesn't want to have someone in their life, starting at 18, you just get to spend all your time with forever. If you're perfectly well suited in the way that somebody in a romance novel is. Thank you, Twixie. Oh my gosh, haha, 420. Oh yeah, because it rounded it up to $59.99. That's perfect. That's perfect. Oh my gosh. I do not have a Goodreads. I think Goodreads is like the garbage bin of the internet. If you're like, I really miss getting to see 40-year-old women being catty and responding with memes that are like 10 years out of date, Goodreads is the website for you. If you ever want to see people argue about shit that absolutely does not matter, go to Goodreads. If you ever want to be like, if you're like, I wonder what LiveJournal was like in the heyday, go to Goodreads. My impression of Goodreads is extremely negative. I do go on Goodreads to like look at book reviews, but I would never make an account. Yes, I read the Sunstone comics when they were still being published on DeviantArt. So I haven't actually read the physical versions of them. I've wanted to do that for a while, but yes, I'm very familiar with Sunstone, which is great if you haven't read that yet, but not everyone's into graphic novels, so I would not necessarily fully recommend that for somebody who wants a book, but they are great. Are we requiring het relationships because Sunstone would fit that if not? True. Although, isn't there, there's like an offshoot of Sunstone that has a male-female pairing, though, doesn't it? I forget what that one's called, though. Publishers prefer younger female main characters? I mean, I guess I hadn't thought about that because I assume that most of these are self-published because they're erotica novels, but yeah. Fuck it. When I write my erotica book, it's going to be fucking crazy, and it's going to be, the protagonist is going to be like 25. She's not going to be 18. She's not going to be 20. So why are the publishers like that? Why? I mean, I'm assuming they're like, well, but that's what people who read books want to read. And it's like, you ever realize that I hate how like trope bound romance and erotica stuff is. Like they basically just, they don't even, I don't know. I shouldn't say they're not even really works of writing because they are, but they're so formulaic. It's like AI is going to replace that shit instantly. Like, that's like, I'm not worried about that for a lot of other books, but I actually think that AI will unironically replace, like, most erotica writing that's super tropey, and no one will be able to tell the difference because they're not really reading it for, like, a novel experience, as in, like, both senses of the word novel. They're reading it because it's like, I need to read something that contains these exact themes that I like, and then I'll read through it all the way, and then I'll find like one or two things that I want to reread when I'm horny, and that's kind of like what people are scanning for. So I don't think they really even care if it's like, as long as it's like, oh, I want an erotica book that's written in the style of like a Cherie Sinclair novel. Boom, press button, done. You know, that's it. It's like erotica is like very, yeah, even when it is self-published, it's still very much influenced by like industry standards, because if you don't publish something that's like, if you publish anything that's like outside very certain tropes, you're not likely to get a lot of good press, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. No, keep it at 99. I like it. It's fine. Erotica is getting a lot more like mainstream for books. That's also true. So many new channels are complete AI readings of AI generated content. That sounds disgusting. I cannot think of something that would be worse to spend my time on listening to than that. But some people are going to do it. Facebook allegedly is filled with AI stuff. So that's not even a little bit surprising to me. I recently heard about this new singer named Taylor Swift. She's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. I will not be, I feel like talking about Taylor Swift is like, I don't know, summoning Baba Yaga. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to leave it be. There's an idea that romance and sex is for young women. By the time we're 30, let alone 40, we're shriveled old hags. Yeah, and like for some reason we keep perpetuating that in the media that is written by women who are older for women that are older. Seems strange. Like, neither the authors nor the audience are like entirely young women. Oh no! I tried to read a novel with a 40-year-old female main character and almost broke my Kindle. The cheating and the doormatting. Oh no. I mean, you way to ruin the opportunity, right? Not you ruining it, but the author ruining it. Be like, I'm going to make an older main character, and I'm going to make the situation insufferable. Yeah. Just completely missed opportunity. I roll my eyes at that. Can every Friday stream just be music recs, please? Well, if people ask for music recommendations, we can certainly incorporate it on a regular basis. As long as somebody asks, we can talk about it. Oh, Vaughn is the artist. The song is called Beg. Oh, I see. I did not hear about that. The Swifties are anti-Swift fan fiction. Interesting. Interesting. No one said a word when all the One Direction fan fiction was up and alive, but suddenly Taylor Swift has a fan fiction and everyone loses their minds. I don't know about that, but some people don't like her. I couldn't care less. I'm like, okay, whatever. But also, she needs to stop pretending like she's a good person. That's my opinion. You can't be, is she the one, I learned recently, I think she's the one that you wouldn't last a day in the asylum where they raised me, and it's like, ma'am, you grew up in a mansion in Pennsylvania, and your father was like a bigwig finance guy. I would not call where you grew up an asylum. Like, but okay. That's all I know. 30, shriveled and old? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what some people think. That's what some people think. I've had women argue to me that it's for young women, that no one wants to read about old women, and that if you're still single and having romance and you're single sex in your 30s or older, you're sad. I mean, I hope they never wake up to their husband divorcing them at 40, because that's going to be real hard for the ego if that ever happens. Like, do they realize, like, that kind of thing always, like, isn't the average age of first marriage in the United States is like 28 or 29 now. Like, it's in the late 20s for women, and I don't know what it is for men. And then, like, divorce is also so common that, like, a lot of people are single again by their, like, late 30s and in their 40s. So, like, I guess if you get married at 27 and divorced by 35, you should just give up on life? That seems like a terrible idea. One of those ideas of society that I wish people realize that they're holding it like this. They're like, oh, I have this idea that I have to find love by 22, and if I don't, I'm gonna be worthless. And it's like, hey, did you realize you're holding it like this? Did you super glue your hands together? Are they stuck like that? Are you a statue? No? You realize you could just, like, do that? You could just decide to not live your life with the fear of, 30 meaning you're on your deathbed? That's just, like, a thing you can just change your mind about? I sound like Ben Shapiro right now. Like a weird Ben Shapiro. But really. That is, in fact, something that you can just do your mind on. You can just be like, well, actually, 30s are great. Actually, almost all women I know that are in their 30s, even women who are in their 40s, have told me the same thing. 20s suck. 30s are where it's at. 20s are for figuring shit out. 30s is for, 20s are for sowing. 30s is for reaping. And you want to reap positive things. That's what I've heard. Women like this don't want to believe it could happen to them. Yeah. Well, that's also why they get really into trad wife stuff and are like, but I'm a good Christian housewife, and I married the first man my father picked out to me at, at church when I was 22. Therefore, my life is set. My friends with benefits said she didn't want to be intimate out of the blue, and we haven't hung out in maybe a month. My heart's not broken, but I feel so discarded. I'm giving her space, but she's never really been the one to message first, so we haven't really talked. I can't help but ask myself what I did. What do you think? This is definitely one of the downfalls of friends with benefits, is in the current usage of it, I find like it's oftentimes treated as a race to care the least, and people unfortunately do tend to, as you've so put, discard their partners when like they find a more serious relationship, or they become uncomfortable with the idea they're acting like a slut or whatever, and then they just kind of leave the other person out to dry, and that's really unfortunate. They owed you, at least as a human, the respect to say, hey, I don't want to see you anymore, and like have a clear conversation about it, versus just like kind of being like, oh, I don't really want to see you anymore, and then and then kind of like leaving you hanging and not really giving you closure. Unfortunately, though, like you can't rely on closure coming from other people. That's something that you have to find within yourself for relationships that have ended, especially when the other person isn't really contacting you. I mean, you can always, like, if you haven't done it, like, you might want to send out a message and, just very thoughtfully lay out, like, hey, I understand, like, you no longer want to be intimate. I totally respect that. It really took me by surprise. I've, just been wondering maybe why you made that change, if you feel like you could share that with me. Or I just want to confirm, like, should I ever try to reach out to you again? Like, do you want to be friends? And it's very unfortunate because I think people just end on the with benefit thing and they totally forget about the friend part. Like, as once they're like, sex is over, it's like they owe you nothing else whatsoever. And that's really, really unfortunate. Yeah. The issue with friends with benefits is they are not actually friends. LOL. I'm so friends with most of mine. Yeah, that's very true. Is a lot of people are not really doing the friend thing at all. It's like an acquaintance with benefits, or like a person you are using in a one-sided, selfish way with benefits. And it's unfortunate when, one person comes in with an actual intention to be genuinely friendly and the other person is not, and you're just on different pages about that. But I think that's really unfortunate. So it might be worth reaching out just to see if something happens, and then if they don't get back to you in a timely manner, like within a day or two, for your own mental well-being, I think it'd probably be best to like try to fully move on, block them, lose their number, try to not think about them too much, because they didn't give you the courtesy and the time of day. So your obligation to them as a person is released. They treated you very poorly. They walked away from the relationship in a way that was harmful to you, that would have been hurtful to pretty much anyone. So you have no obligation to treat them above and beyond with a higher level of kindness, unless you want to, because that feels like that's like what would be in your value set for you. That's like really important to you, but you don't have to. You can just walk away the same way, lose their number, not contact them, block their number, do whatever level of unpairing you have to do. And then, grief is a very real thing. And even if it doesn't seem like, oh, well, it wasn't a real relationship and, we didn't date or anything, we're together that long, it's silly to grieve it. But I think grief is real, even for these relationships the outside world maybe wouldn't see as serious or as important as, a marriage or like a long-term romantic partnership. But finding your own ways to deal with grief is a process, and there's lots of ways to deal with that. I've seen people use like there's grief decks, there's books about grief, there's all kinds of like mental health tools online for dealing for grief, and I might look into that for sure. I am out here being the Dear Abby of Kinksters. I try. I like a friends with benefits, so we were actually friends. Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, I feel like if somebody's like, oh, this is my fuck buddy, I hold that in much higher regard than a friends with benefits relationship. Like, they are not necessarily functionally different from each other, but I feel like a friends with benefits relationship, whenever I hear about it, I'm like, ooh, that's probably not going to work out. Where fuck buddies is like, okay. Like, completely random, no real hard evidence for that judgment whatsoever, but that's my impression. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to take one more question here. Time flies. My goodness. Oh, we had been such good friends, though. They said they'd talk about it, and when we hung out next, they didn't want to. I mean, that's kind of more or less your answer. I mean, I think it, like, as I said, I think it would be worth one more reaching out. Give them the opportunity to really clearly know how it's emotionally affecting you. Like, I mean, you can't really corner them and force them to have a conversation, but if they're being avoidant and they don't really want to take responsibility for their end of what's going on here, if they've said that they're going to talk about it with you and all that stuff, you know, you can say, hey, I understood that earlier, you're really comfortable talking about this. I hope you can understand this is really important to me because I feel like I'm, you know, kind of being left hanging here. I just want to make sure that we can both get closure. I'm getting the sense you don't really want to continue engaging this relationship, and I don't want to keep engaging in it if it's going to keep, you know, hurting me like this emotionally the way that it is. So it's probably best if you both just, like, stop talking to each other and seeing each other. Maybe that's a little bit cold, but I'm the kind of person where if somebody's like continually hurting me over and over and over again, and they have not been treating me with respect, I don't really care about maintaining a relationship with them. Like, I'm just like, okay, bye. See ya. I don't really get anything out of hanging around with people that have mistreated me for a very long time, and have like continually not like proven over and over again they're not willing to have a conversation about it and like don't really want to address it, because that's never going to be a good relationship. I don't know. It's just a vibe thing. There's not really any meaningful difference between fuck buddy and friends with benefits. It's just purely based on like how I've seen relationships using those different terminologies play out. There's no scientific basis for that whatsoever. But good luck, though. I hope that I know, like, especially when it's sudden and like you still see each other and you're like, it can be really, really, really hard to move past that, even if you weren't necessarily like super romantically involved or together for very long in an intimate way. But it can still hurt, and that's still valid, even if it's not a long-term romantic relationship. All right, that was a follow-up to the last question, so we still have one more. I'm going to try to get to. Oh, it was the event planners. I see. The problem is we don't have dungeon spaces except for a couple individuals who have done private dungeons, so renting spaces for events are usually owned by vanilla people. Oh, yeah, that can cause a lot of problems. That can cause a lot of things to be randomly and weirdly banned for no discernible legal reason. Although it may actually have something to do with insurance. Like insurance coverage. Ooh, good question, Marshall. What are your what am I this is brief. I am reading The Memory Police. It's been forever and a day since I've read a one-off self-contained fiction novel, and I'm excited to read something that's not a multi-book series and is not like a workbook. Like, it's not a book about like polyamory or relationships or dating or kink or anything. It's just a book for pleasure. So I'm excited to finish that up, because normally I tend to read a lot of nonfiction, and it's almost always like work related. So even though I really enjoy reading, I mostly like I'm using a ton of sticky notes, and it's like I'm in work mode when I'm reading it. It's not just for enjoyment. Even though it is enjoyable, it's not purely for just fun, and that's different. I'm definitely gonna go back eventually to reviewing kink erotica novels. It's not been super high on my radar, but definitely this summer I would like to get back to doing that more. If there's any recommendations for newer ones I should check out, I'll probably see if the usual suspects have published new books. Other than that, I have not checked to see if there's any I'll probably read, like, if there's a new Cherie Sinclair book, I'll probably read one of those. I'll probably read maybe like the Siren book. I usually do them in like groups of 3 or 4, depending on how long they are. And I have also, I don't know if I've ever like done a video talking about having read the Sleeping Beauty trilogy, but that's also like worth mentioning too. What are your thoughts about a sub having, I know I'm reading more than one, but those were like short questions, so I wanted to get to those. What are your thoughts about a sub having a primary dom, but interested in playing with other doms? Oh, like play partners, like not powered exchange, but like top things. What are the pitfalls, and what are some strategies to avoid those? Any recommendations on resources to navigate that more successfully? There's not really anything specifically I can point to for like a book that talks about this. Maybe Power Circus gets into that a little bit, but not... I can't think of anything specifically in there that's like, here's a piece of wisdom. I would say it's actually quite common for submissives to have a dominant partner they do powered exchange with, but then they still have, like, maybe they do pickup play, or they casually play with friends, or do like group scenes with friends. Obviously the pitfalls are any sort of obscurity around boundaries. So like I think it's really important to be super clear up front of like, if you have any feelings about like, you know, types of scenes, or if it's sexual or not, or what outfits are worn, or titles are used, or aftercare that's done, like all that has to be talked about ahead of time as much as possible, where those lines are. I think making assumptions about like, but they would never do this, of course, like anything that involves like but that's just common sense. You got to go to the drawing board. You got to actually be there with your partner, drawing out where those lines are, because you cannot assume that they are on the same page with you a total, like 100% of the time on where those things are at. So talking about that for sure. Also, I'd probably say, especially if your submissive wants to play with other doms and they want to do like powered exchangey stuff like during a scene in a scene space, like where the lines are for where your powered exchange ends and theirs begins, right? So like, do you have a title or like phrases or like behaviors that you only want to have done in your relationship versus like what's okay to do with other people? So like maybe you're master, but like calling other people sir is fine, but not master. Or maybe like you wouldn't want her to like wear a collar for them or like kneel for them or like whatever. But those are all things you have to negotiate and like talk about together as a couple and figure out what things you're willing to bend for there, or where things you want to have more firm boundaries with. And yeah, I think just like maintaining, like, it sort of depends on like what your style of powered exchange is, but I think for a lot of people it's really beneficial to maintain an attitude of trying to center the primary relationship of like, you know, my dom is the one who does my aftercare, or, you know, I always tell my dom about all the scenes that I do. I debrief with him about them. You know, maybe you do some level of like, I don't really like this, but I know some people do, like they have their primary dominant partner like help them vet potential partners, like, oh, like I'm thinking about playing with this person, so I'm gonna ask my dom for like their opinion about, you know, their profile or their skill set or like how knowledgeable they are. Some people are not comfortable with that. I'm not, but like some people do also do that too. But, you know, having your partner be involved, debriefing, reconnecting, having time and space to reconnect after scenes is really important too. But I think it's very manageable. I think it just depends on your expectations and like, you know, what you want to do in those scenes or not, or how involved you want to be. I generally haven't had any issues with partners. Like if I have a partner who's a dom, I haven't really had problems playing with other dominant people. I would say, if anything, as a submissive, if you are going to parties as a submissive, as a partnered person, it can be a lot harder to meet play partners, because people assume, kind of going back to that jealousy and possessiveness conversation, people assume, oh, well, you're a sub with a dom, so I have to like ask permission from your master to like be able to even approach you or make eye contact with you or like talk to you at all. Like people are like kind of nervous about approaching who they perceive, even if they're not really, but like who they perceive as like being owned subs, and like the assumptions they make about that relationship, especially depending on like how the people involved look. Like, especially when I was younger and I was with partners that were much older than me, which, I mean, to be fair, hasn't totally changed, but you know, being, you know, 22 in the scene and having a partner who's in their, you know, mid-30s, I seem really young, I'm wearing a collar, I'm close to this one guy, like, it's gonna really seem like, oh, she's like his, and she's maybe not like available to play with. But, you know, I've had a very different experience being older and going to places on my own, so it really just depends. But yeah, I would love to at one point, hopefully sooner rather than later, write the next great kink erotica novel. I kind of go between like two ideas. I go through one idea, which is like sort of doing a take on the 50 Shades of Greys of the world, you know, kind of that version of like a more realistic, like conventional powered exchange relationship, like not anything magical, no fantasy, no Omegaverse, nothing like that. You know, just a very regular powered exchange romance novel that's kind of trying to give a more realistic take on, you know, the kink community and kink activities themselves. But then also is sort of like maybe playing around with tropes that people expect from novels like that hopefully will help to draw them into the novel and like be invested in the story and maybe learn some stuff along the way about how things are done or talked about or what the scene is really like outside of a fantasy. But then I also think about doing some stuff that's got some real fuck shit in it and is like more of like a, like not really Omegaverse, but is in like my wheelhouse of like fantasy, not romance even, but like fantasy erotica novels. That's like definitely has kink in it, but it's not like in the conventional sense of like a human dom sub powered exchange relationship as they exist in the real world. They're kind of playing more on those fantasy elements, but I don't know. Maybe one day. I gotta get ahead on editing all my YouTube videos first, and that's really the goal. My goal is to get to a point where I can get ahead enough on editing things, doing all my other shit to where I can like actually work on like writing an erotica and like storyboarding something and like making that happen before I'm 35. That's like my goal. That would be my goal. Not even necessarily published, not even necessarily going to shop it around anywhere, but just to write it, just to have it out there in the world and maybe self-publish it at some point before we, you know, get completely overrun by AI stuff, but who knows. And like also like I like incorporating different things. Like I want to have like I ideally want to have like, you know, polyamorous relationships represented. I think in the book that I want to write about like a more conventional like human powered exchange relationship, like a male female power exchange relationship. I don't think I necessarily want to have them have like a fully poly relationship because that might scare a lot of readers off, but maybe have somebody in like their personal life or circle that has a polycule just to have it kind of represented in there in the story in some way. But then my other novel that's like more, there would be more fucked up. I would like to have, you know, some kind of more, I don't know if I'd go with a triad for the sake of like the trope of it and like that being the thing that more people are comfortable with, but you know, who knows where things will end up if we'll write anything at all, but that's the dream. That's the goal. I'm 29. I'm ancient by romance novel standards. I'm an old dried up hag. You could self-publish and tons of people would read it. I know, but I'm nervous about that. I would at least want to have an editor. I would not want to just have it. I'd have to, like, I would self-publish, but it would have to be, I'd want it to be more professional than that. I'd want somebody who's, like, in the business to read through it and write it. I did at one point, way back in the day, I did write some erotica. But when I was very, very early on in the kink community, I did like publish a few that got zero attention on like fanfiction.net. And I think on AO3, and a couple people read it, and I remember I had one person who was like, they were an English professor at a university, and they were like, your stuff's really good, you should definitely 100% keep writing, please. And I always try to remember that in my head whenever I'm like, I shouldn't write anymore, I shouldn't even try. Like, one person believed in me, and one person believed in my YouTube channel once upon a time, and that was all it took to make a whole YouTube channel. So you know what, maybe that's all I really need. Reverse harems are very popular, so don't be afraid to write poly. But like, is a reverse harem really poly? I don't know. I'm more of like, I like FF stuff more. I don't really know if that's even in the demo of like what people like to read. I feel like I gotta sneak that in there. I don't feel like people like reading lesbian erotica, so I gotta figure out a way to get it in there somewhere else. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't look like a sea hag yet. Thank you. I wouldn't worry about scaling people or scaring people off with the first book if you try to appeal to too wide of an audience. Yeah, I guess it's more about like, I mean, there's a niche for everything, right? But I think there's like, with the book second book idea is like, that's going to be just purely for me. It's gonna be kind of whatever I want to do with it. But the first book I had an idea for is sort of meant to be, it's like these other books that people in sort of kink erotica like, but it's more realistic. And so that's more my idea with it, is to design it more to get people that are kink curious to read it, and kind of breadcrumb them in with tropes they like, and then subtly teach them about like how things really work and how people really talk and how consent really works. And then the other one is just purely for me. It will just be for me. Love triangle solved by polyamory? True. People who like reading lesbian erotica, they're called lesbians. But in the sense of like in the kink erotica community, like the community I'd be trying to reach with these books, hopefully, or like whatever I write if I end up doing it. I don't know if they'd read it if it was like, it's kind of like the Duke of Burgundy, and then that's it. That's like the only one that exists. And that's a movie. It's not even an erotica book. Not to jinx anything, but I usually don't. Like, writer's block is not something at least when I write YouTube videos, I very rarely deal with that. But it's sucky. It's sucky. That's also partly the reason, like, I have spurts of ideas I write down in a notebook of, like, things I want to do when I eventually write this, and, like, kinds of, like, ideas I have for characters and stuff, but I don't know. I know whatever I write, it's gonna probably be garbage, but it's fine because it's erotica. It's like no one's here for the next great American novel. So if we ever do write it, y'all can't judge me because I don't have a degree in English. I don't like have any experience really with creative writing. It's gonna be what it is, all right? I'm gonna hire an editor that's really good, and we're gonna hopefully turn trash into treasure, but it's mostly about tricking vanilla people who like kink erotica to learning something. That's really the goal. So mixing in the vegetables with the macaroni and cheese. True. Always the potential for spin-offs. Your FF couple could be secondary characters in the first novel that make people want to know their story. That is an idea. I could just have an all lesbian polycule. That would mess people up. 4-person polycule, not a man in sight. Not a man in sight. People would not know what to do with that information. My only advice is just to start writing a very small amount, but every day without fail. I mean, yeah. I get that for sure. But I write so much right now for like YouTube stuff, I don't really have time for like other kinds of writing. So my idea is to streamline my YouTube process and get ahead on doing stuff enough to where like I'm not like, I've written like 6 YouTube scripts in the past week. So I've just been doing a lot of writing. So my goal is to get ahead on all of that, to have enough time to do more pleasurable things in general besides work, and then also have time to write stuff that's work-ish stuff, but is not just like YouTube video scripts. This is the first time I'm hearing about this educational kink erotica idea. That's such a good idea. I'm looking forward to reading it. Well, I've sort of played with the idea for like a couple of years now, but it has yet to come to fruition. But it is a goal. Hopefully it'll happen. I think, like, I like the idea of writing, like, kink nonfiction as well, but I feel like there's so many good books now and, like, good authors in that space. I honestly think at this juncture in my life, I would actually have more utility in writing a sneaky educational erotica book than I would have writing a just, like, conventional nonfiction. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the encouragement. Anyways, I gotta go, y'all. Thank you so much for watching me. I really appreciate you all hanging out with me on this Friday evening. We stream every Friday here at 6 o'clock, more or less. And yeah, the new video came out today if you didn't watch it. It's about collar alternatives and alternative signs of ownership in BDSM besides collars. If you've not seen it yet, please check it out. And yeah, hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye! Benita. There we go. Okay, signs of life. She must have been really snoozing because she did not normally when she hears me say bye, she like perks up. But this time, I didn't even get her to open her eyes. She was like, no ma'am, I'm sleepy. There are dozens of us. That's true. That's true. All right.